A big hello to the West Coast. Welcome, San Francisco. My name is Lee Oden, and I'm the CEO of Top Rank Marketing. And joining us from San Francisco is Clayton Wood.
Hey Lee, I'm Clayton Wood, digital marketing consultant. I'm an author, speaker, and marketer for over 1,500 brands. I've had the lucky pleasure to be published in a lot of publications, and I'm excited to be here with everybody today.
Oh, this is awesome. It's
Lee,
great to meet you, Clayton, virtually. Now, as we finish off our 18th hour of broadcasting the Global Marketing Day Conference, I want to really reinforce how appreciative I am, and I think everyone else here is, of Semrush at putting together such a fantastic lineup. It's been stellar, and I think that we've got 6 more hours, no, not 6 more hours, yeah, 6 more hours, yes we do, of amazing content planned for you, so please stay tuned in if you can, and again, make sure that you join us on the social web, hashtag Global Marketing Day, as well as globalmarketingday.com. All right, take it away, Clayton.
All right, thanks, Lee. To finish up Global Marketing Day, we'll have speakers from the Financial Times, Reddit, SAP, and WeWork. For the next 2 sessions, we'll feature guest speakers from New York and San Francisco, so we can get the best of both coasts. For those of you just joining us, the conference is broken up into 30-minute segments. Our featured speaker has 15 minutes of a presentation, and then that's followed by 15 minutes discussion with our guest experts. So keep engaged on social media with the hashtag Global Marketing Day. And any questions, join us on globalmarketingday.com and add your questions to the conversation. All right, so next up, we've got Shanee, Ben-Zur, Head of Marketing and Growth at Crunchbase. Shanee leads the teams that shape Crunchbase's brand, acquire new customers, and retain users. Tapping into her enterprise experience, she will dive deep into the modern marketing department, how to go from campaigns to experiments, building a more metrics-driven marketing department. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And then at the end of the presentation, we'll have 2 special guests who will join us to discuss driving real results for your business. We've got Eric Christensen, CEO and co-founder of Justuno, and Lenny Nguyen, head of SEO and ASO at Invoice2Go. Eric has over 15 years experience in e-commerce and tech, with a focus on sustainable growth and product development. And Lenny is head of SEO, as I mentioned, and ASO at Invoice2Go. It's a SaaS company working to simplify the lives of small business owners around the world. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to let's get started with you. Take it away, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
I appreciate it. So I hope that folks can get something out of this. I built it sort of based on my experiences of running different teams in consumer organizations and enterprise organizations. And we'll just sort of make our way through. And if folks have questions, just submit them online. So let's start here. The father of modern management says, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. That's Peter Drucker. And that's going to be the kind of theme of the presentation as we go through. We'll go through the types of marketers that exist, the types of marketing organizations, and the ingredients for success. So let's just jump in. 2 kinds of marketers. We have the illusionists and we have the scientists. The illusionists are people who just make you feel like they did something amazing. You don't really know if something amazing happened. You don't know if it's the Wizard of Oz who really isn't doing anything but is making you think it. Whereas the scientists are people who measure, they test, they implement, and then they use different tools to find the right answers. So try to think about your marketing organization and decide whether you're an illusionist or a scientist. The downside of being an illusionist is your tactics are unscalable. These are people who like bright, shiny things but don't necessarily know how to create a program. Scientists, the upside is they have repeatable and scalable initiatives that'll help you have impact as an organization. Here's an example of an illusionist. So if we look at the folks from Mad Men, yes, this was a different time. They didn't have marketing automation. They didn't have social media. So really their only choice was to kind of make bright, shiny things happen. But we also have scientists. These are folks who had a hypothesis, they thought they could make something happen, they tested it, and they did, and they achieved incredible results. In my perfect world, you have a scientist with a side of magic. These are people who are not afraid to test things, but they're also okay with sometimes taking a risk based on something they may or may not know is true. But ideally, they're leaning more into the science. Now, for those scientists and illusionists, they have two kinds of approaches for how they handle marketing. You have the jumpers, and you have the testers. The jumpers are people who say, okay, I have $1 million budget, I'm going to spend all of it on this one initiative, whether or not I know it's going to be successful. The testers are people who say, I'm going to take $5,000 of my $1 million budget, do a couple tests, and validate it before I go all in. The interesting thing about jumpers is you notice that those are people who spend all of their time trying to justify the jump that they took, whether or not it was successful. That's not necessarily what your priority should be. The testers, on the other hand, they're pretty agnostic about what would work. These are the folks that say, hey, I have an idea. It may or may not happen. If you guys don't like it, that's totally okay. Here's an example of a jumper. Yeah. Pepsi went all in on an idea that was horrible, and I feel like if they had done some testing to test the market, pressure test the message, they would have clearly gotten signal that this was a bad idea. At the end of the day, they had to take down the advertising, and that's millions of dollars lost. Tester. So several years ago, Oreo saw a moment in time. They took a chance on organic to take advantage of when the Super Bowl had a blackout, and they put a really timely ad up. And then they put a bunch of advertising dollars behind it. They used an organic test to justify the spend, and they had a way better return on investment than Pepsi did. So, similar to the scientist versus illusionist, you kind of want to be a tester with a wild side. This is a person who has hypotheses, but isn't afraid to test something that's kind of outlandish because you never know what magic will happen. So this is the way I just kind of want to get folks to think about what type of marketers there are, what ways marketers can approach their different initiatives, and then we can get to what it's like to actually build a more metrics-driven team. So the new marketing organization, the future of marketing, these are teams that want to impact business and customers in measurable ways. These aren't teams like Mad Men that just want to make bright, shiny objects. These are teams that care about knowing objectively that they've achieved something. They want their work to have high returns and be cost efficient. It's really easy nowadays to spend lots and lots of money on the different platforms we have available to us, but it's just as easy to have a CEO come around and say, what are you doing for me? And that's why it's important to have a really clear return on investment. And then the last thing that we want of our teams is the ability to scale and grow our efforts. Yes, we've all been in that conversation with our manager where we say, hey, I just need 2 more people. And then they ask you why, and you're like, because we need to do stuff. That's not going to work in the future, and if you have a measurable, scalable program, you'll be able to justify really clearly why you need additional headcount. So that leads me to the new marketing organization, the scientist tester. This is what you want to have in your team, and this is how you'll ensure that you have success. Okay, speaking of success, I like to do things in a really formulaic way so that they're repeatable. So let's talk about the formula for marketing team success. Number 1, everything you do should be aligned to the company objectives. There's no reason why a marketing organization should take on objectives that have no connection to what's important to the top folks at the company. The second thing is you should be focused. Yes, there are so many different things we could try, but make a choice. Third, it should be measurable. If you can't measure it, don't do it. And then fourth, you should prioritize the things that you're doing. There is always going to be a long to-do list. Make a choice. I can kind of jump through these things. So this is kind of thinking about what each of these means. I feel like there's more to come, and I'm really excited about the question, so I'm going to keep moving. Speaking about alignment and focus, the question I get oftentimes is, how do I make sure I'm aligned to my business objectives? I think the main question you should ask is, where does your company need help marketing? And you can look at your funnel to understand that. Do people know your brand? Are people considering your products? Are they becoming customers? And are they staying customers? And you'll be able to quickly identify which of those is your biggest problem, and that's where your marketing organization should focus. And once you know where you focus, you pick a metric. And again, it's kind of dependent on how your business works. I work in a freemium plus direct sales business. Some people work in only one or the other. But the key metrics are the key metrics across the company. So how do you actually get to the execution part? I believe that there needs to be a culture shift within marketing. We need to go from saying initiatives to experiments. Initiatives are saying, hey, I'm going to do this thing and I think it's going to, this is what I'm going to do. An example of that is we're going to run display ads for more traffic to site. The problem with that is we don't know that doing that thing will necessarily result in the desired impact. X, we don't want that. On the experiment side, you say things like, I'm going to test if doing this thing will result in that output. An example is, we're going to test if running display ads has an incremental lift on site traffic. The benefit is you focus on learning before you actually scale. I'm going to show you a really scary chart. Don't worry about it so much, but just know that there is a nice way that you can kind of play chutes and ladders to get yourself to a place where you have an experiment that turns into a program. One watch out, though, is experiment overkill. You don't have to test everything. If you know something objectively to be true, trust your gut. Don't test it. There are many experiments that you could do, and then there's a subset that's just the needle movers. Focus on those. The next culture shift I would suggest is going from raw data to insights. Thousands of different metrics we can look at, but data in and of itself isn't really meaningful. It's the insights that tell you how you should change your business. And then the one watch out here is be wary of confirmation bias. Sometimes you are really excited about an idea, you launch that idea, and then afterwards you do everything you can to justify that that was in fact the right idea. That should not be your goal. You really should focus on what actually moved the needle for the company. A little watch out, analysis paralysis. Yes, there's all the data in the universe, and then there's a subset of that that actually matters. So putting it together, here's what I recommend. Understand your company's objectives. Use those objectives to inform your marketing objectives. Build experiments that identify initiatives that could achieve the objectives, and then double down on the winners and forget the losers. And then only focus on the KPIs, or the key performance indicators or metrics that matter to the business, and understand the insights that help you improve your program. And so we will leave it on a quote from Lord Kelvin: if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you so much for that insightful presentation on maximizing your marketing department's impact across a business. Such an intricate thing to do, and I'm sure it's been very interesting at Crunchbase. Before we jump into the discussion questions, let us know if you have any questions about the presentation or about what's coming up next by adding your question in the mix at globalmarketingday.com, and engage with us, with the community, by using hashtag Global Marketing Day. Okay, now we've brought in a couple of guest experts because we know that their experience specifically is around what we're talking about here. I'd like to start with you, Lenny. What are some of the meaningful KPIs that might earn respect for a marketing team throughout an organization?
Great question. So when you're looking at KPIs, it's really important. A lot of times we look at things in a silo. We say, let's increase organic traffic, let's increase rankings. We say these things in the marketing department, but we also say them across the organization, and oftentimes that's confusing, right? So just because I increase organic traffic and increase rankings, what does that really mean for the business? So I'd say really what the most important thing to do is look at these metrics and bring it down to earth for everyone else. If we're increasing rankings, we're increasing traffic, which therefore increases the more people to your website, and then increases your business. And at the end of the day, that impacts the bottom line, right? So whether it's subscriptions or sales or whatever it is for your business, I think a lot of times we get really stuck in our buzzwords and we say these things, but what we need to do is just to remember that we have to bring it down to earth to everyone, and everything flows into each other.
Absolutely, that's great. And Eric, we've got a question from Jay in the audience. Jay wants to know, can you provide one quick example of a way to find out where you might have leaks in your marketing funnel?
From Jay?
Yes.
What's up, Jay? Where do you have leaks in your marketing funnel? Well, I often refer our own business as a sailboat. We're always sailing, and we're finding leaks in our boat, patching them, and moving on. The one thing we've done with Justuna in our company is we've really aligned marketing and sales to work together, to be one. And by doing that, once a week, I'm making sure my department heads are meeting to communicate together on what is working, what's not working, where do we have problems. And it's that communication loop, I would say, would be the number one way to find leaks.
Yeah. In
terms of what problems are your two teams having. And at the end of the day, simplifying it, like you're saying, is we did, I just drew it out, we had if we had 100 leads come in, did sales ops define 100 leads, and did the sales team get 100 leads? Something as simple as that, you know whether or not every lead is being tagged all the way through.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Hey,
Yeah.
can I actually make a comment on the presentation that
Sure.
you gave? So we talked a lot about testing and experimentation. And one thing I think a lot of us don't talk about is sometimes you have this great idea, you test it, and you realize that that idea probably didn't play out, but that's not a bad thing. What that means is your control was working. What
Yeah.
you were doing was working. So if you're testing and you find that your idea wasn't the best, that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means now you can focus on something else.
Yeah. One thing I would add on the finding the leaks is what we do is we look at the conversion rates between each stage of the funnel, and then we ask which of these could we double and which of these could we 10x. And if there are any that we could double, then that's the one we would focus on. Whereas you have some metrics where there's really no physical way you could double the number, so you kind of move on to the next one. And I think it's related to that, like maybe your control is good enough and there's another place you could focus your efforts.
We do a lot of reverse engineering too now, where you have so many leads coming in. What we do is we look at our ideal customer profile at the end of the month. Our top 10% of our sales conversions. Understand those and bring those back to marketing to go find the top ICP.
Yeah.
Sure. I've got another great question for you, Shanee. How to measure, and it's from the audience. Somebody's asking, how do you measure ROI from PR campaigns?
Ooh, okay, this one's exciting for me. I think there's this misconception that you can't measure anything that's related to brand or really top of funnel things, and I'm on a crusade to change that. So the way I think you can measure the impact from PR campaigns is consider it a top of funnel tactic, so a thing that can drive traffic to your website or increase search volume. And what you want to do is benchmark what your kind of current traffic is. Sometimes I look at the year prior or the week before, and then you look at what your current search volume is and your search impressions. And then after you'd run a big launch or after you get a really great PR hit, you look to see if either of those moved. And I think that's a great chance for us to be honest on the comm side about what the impact of PR is. So always think about when you're reaching out to media for coverage, what is the desired outcome? And for me and for my team, it really is about increasing the perception, which we can measure through brand trackers, and increasing traffic, which we look at through both search intent and traffic to the website.
Sure. And somebody else is asking, Lenny, maybe this is a good question for you. Aside from A/B testing, what other testings do you recommend, or what have you experienced?
Aside from conversion rate optimization
Yeah.
testing in general?
Yeah.
It's so funny.
What other tests are
We were
good?
actually just talking about this. So in the testing world, when I was talking about testing earlier, I was talking about specifically conversion rate optimization. So once someone gets to your website, how do you get them to convert? SEO testing does actually exist, but what you need to do is test like pages versus other like pages. There is no real SEO testing solution where Google's crawling your variation in your control. And so I would just be really careful there when it comes to testing. So to answer your question, first we need to be clear about what is it that we want to test, what are our goals there, and that's how we get there.
Got it. Okay. And how many tests, and this is open for anybody, Eric, maybe you've got some good insight on this. How many times do you test something before you say, okay, this is it? Also, that speaks to how large should the test be?
Well, I think the reality is, in marketing as well, it's just getting one instance up is hard enough.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of realities. I think, whether it's you're working with pop-ups, display, menu bars, whatever, how many tests? You want to test at least one thing 3 times. And you have to do it over a minimum a week. Mm-hmm. And you want to test things that are being actually engaged with on your website. Mm-hmm. And then from there, you can do very, using conversion platforms, very incremental, easy tests that are very light and even dynamic, that if you can let them run automatically, then you're saving your team time.
Yeah, actually, to comment on that note, I think you're right. Sometimes when you're testing some of your big tests, your radical changes, you can do some of those first, but you will get to a point where you're doing sort of micro testing. You're turning some levers, some knobs, and you just need to be clear, again, on what that goal is. And if your goal is to increase conversion rate on a specific page, and maybe that page hasn't performed well ever, maybe you can take some big swings at first and then narrow it down and just continue to reiterate upon some of those tests.
Yeah, one thing that we did is we created an index that said, what is the combination of volume of people that could be impacted by the experiment, the potential impact that the experiment would have on the desired metric, and then the difficulty of launching that. And then we kind of prioritized our experiments based off of that.
Yeah, I've got somebody that it's Jay is asking. It's a starter question. If we're starting a marketing department, what sort of channels would you go full in on, or what would you sort of test?
I would say it depends what kind of industry you're in, but my message to everyone is from day one, start capturing email addresses. That's the number one thing you want to do. Even if you have 100 visitors to your website or 1,000, you need to be converting. You can convert up to 5% of your daily traffic into an email, which is free to retarget. That's where you start.
That's an interesting question. It's not one size fits all, right? Like you said, it depends on your industry, your market. You just have to identify who your audience is, where are they, what channels are they active in, and that's really where you should start before you start building your marketing department.
Yep.
That's when in 2005, when we launched an online snowboard company, we asked, where are our customers? And we found them, they're on different snowboarding forums asking what size snowboard they should buy. So we were proactive and went out and became the authority in the space, helped them answer their questions, and naturally they saw us as the authority and came and bought from our website. So I think that'd probably be your approach as well, as who are your customers and where can you go with minimal budget to go get them. Because most likely in today's age, spending isn't not going to be how you're going to win the game, especially if you're starting.
Absolutely. Okay, a couple of more questions, and then we're going to turn it back over to New York for our next presentation. Pia is asking, how do you keep track of testing campaigns and compare results? Which metrics do you compare? Do you guys have any recommendations for tools or metrics?
If only there was a visitor conversion platform.
Oh, wow.
You asked earlier. I remember.
With us, what we like to do is, with the analytics we provide is you want to set your baseline KPIs.
Yeah.
And so that is, where do you start? Well, first start is figuring out from your daily visitors, what percentage of them do you want to convert? You want to engage with and convert into, say, an email address or a sale. Those two numbers you should understand.
We've been using Airtable.
Okay.
I was a slow adopter of Airtable. I was like, I just got on my Google Sheets. But once we started to see, the different ways you can slice and dice information on Airtable, it was really clear that when you are running like hundreds of different tests and you have many different audiences, that Airtable gives you just so many different ways to see the information. It's just a great way to track.
Okay.
I second that. Our marketing team lives in Airtable.
You like Airtable too? Okay. So Victor is asking, with a scientist or a tester mindset, it may be very hard to actually try something new, and you may miss a great opportunity that sort of requires this courageous, idea here and the ability to move quickly. How do you find a balance between what's a good idea to spend your time testing on?
So something that Shanee, you mentioned in your presentation is you don't want to overkill when it comes to testing. There are some things you need to just do that are going to improve the user experience, and there are some things that you need to test. I would say, for example, if you feel like your text or your font is too small on your website, you don't need to test that, guys. If it doesn't look good on your phone, then increase that font size, and we don't need to be testing things like that. But if you're looking at specific parts in your funnel and you're seeing some dropout in very specific areas, then you know that those pages or those touch points are where you need to start testing. And it can be something small, right? It could be something like changing the text on a button, or it could be just redesigning the whole page. Whatever it is, you need to scientifically go about it.
And I think this is where the power of brainstorming can be really valuable. Every quarter we get groups of people together in the room, we kind of put the big question on the board, and then we just go crazy coming up with ideas. Mine always starts with, we're going to go to people's houses and knock on their doors. That's the first idea I always start with, just to let people know how wild they can go. And then you can refine those ideas and pick the ones that you actually want to execute.
And not go to people's houses.
I'm saying it could
sometimes
work.
Getting outside, that's where you get into the customer advisory group. That's, being a product-centric, customer-centric company. that's where you're going to get the greatest insights.
Well, we see it here in San Francisco in the train stations.
Yeah.
A lot of things are happening with, user testing and people out in public. So it's pretty interesting. Okay. Sabatha says, the internet environment is so dynamic and rapidly changing. What are the validity of these tests? Are there certain things that sort of stay the same? A/B testing for email subject lines, or ads or visuals?
I'll take that one. Well, consumers are always changing, right? Our internet habits are constantly changing. So the answer to that is, in my opinion, no. There are not. You should always be testing. You should always be reiterating. As we change, as we grow, one subject line that worked last year is not going to work this year. It's not guaranteed to work next year.
Okay, that's a good answer. Eric?
Well, on top of that is strategies are evolving as well. So we talk about sending emails. How many people, when they send that email, are reinforcing that marketing message on site? So the full life cycle campaign, bringing that customer all the way through the journey. Still today, digital marketers are spending so much money to drive traffic, but still struggling to be able to invest in converting that website traffic. And that's what's new, I think, coming down the pipeline is strategies and tools to do that.
Yeah, I like to use the best practices as a starting point for the experiments and then just validate whether that best practice is actually valid for the company I'm working at. Like in my experience, before I came to Crunchbase, I was at Dropbox for a long time, and a lot of the things that worked for us at Dropbox don't work for us at Crunchbase, and I think vice versa would be true as well.
And same with Semrush. I mean, SEO we're talking about, what worked last year isn't working this year, last month, whatever. It's a game. You have the illusionist, the scientist, and the gamer. I mean, that's what marketing is.
Yeah, it's quite a roller coaster watching all of the updates that Google's coming out with. And in 2019, it seems like they're trying to do a little bit better of a job of communicating that. So I'm sure we're all paying attention to the Google Webmasters Twitter account. One more question, and I've just got a couple of minutes, but it seems like it would be a great sort of thing for all three of you to answer, and that is, in terms of skill, what's the best balance for a small, effective marketing team? What are your starting lineup for players?
You really touched on it already. You want scientists. You want people who experiment. So I would say the marketing mindset is not someone who says, I have a great idea. The best mindset to have is, I have this idea, but let's test it. It may or may not work. Let's just see how it goes, and we'll reiterate and find the best solution there.
Anybody else?
I mean, ROI is the biggest thing. At the end of the day, marketing's job is to drive in leads, in my opinion. And it's sales' job to close those leads, but they're working together. So at the end of the day, those two need to be able to answer to what we're spending to drive in leads. Or not spending, because you don't have to spend money to drive in the right leads. So whatever is being worked on, what's the ROI around that? We're a self-funding company, so we have to focus on ROI, whereas you have the illusionist companies here that are buying billboards that don't work.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I'm guessing we've got all sorts of different situations in the audience today. So thank you very much for joining us. That's all the time we have for discussion. What a fantastic session! I want to thank my guest experts today and our Crunchbase head of marketing and growth. Thank you very much. What a great session. Keep the conversation going on social media if you're in the audience. We'd love to hear from you. Use hashtag Global Marketing Day to talk about how you're going to build more metric-driven marketing department. And I'm going to turn it back over to Lee Oden in New York for our next special session. Lee, I'll turn it over to you.